Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia Season 5, Episode 19. Everyone, I am so excited to talk about this episode because this is an episode that not only has great things to talk about when it comes to the writing of the original manga itself, but I don't know, the episode I watched had some very strange dialogue. Like, really, in multiple spots, it was like, this is almost verging on nonsensical. So much so that I have to really just think that the translation itself is wonky. So I will show you the spots, but I think it might be the file I watched. But yeah, not the best thing I've ever seen. Pretty wonky in a few places. But yeah, you might also see the title. You know, the anime kind of shoots itself in the foot. There are a few shots in there where I think the manga just looks so much better, where you kind of need the grittiness of the manga, but the anime can't really do that. Also, I'm looking at one particular shot here. I'll just put it up on the screen because now that I'm noticing it, it looks pretty bad. Like, this is a pretty terrible oof. Anyway, not gonna get into that. We're gonna do like the quick little recap, but I gotta tell ya, this episode is one where you just see the biggest collection of plot devices and writing tricks, and I will do my best to give you my perspective on this. Mind you, you're wonderful viewers, and wonderful viewers, they just like having fun. So a lot of these things might be things that you might think, oh, you know, that's a little bit too much, a little bit too critical, a little bit too anal, and I accept that. But at the same time, I'm a review channel. Just keep that in mind. It's because when we're going into this kind of stuff, this is like hardcore technicalities that I'm going to be pointing out, and some people don't really enjoy that. Just know, overall, I think it's a really cool episode, and from my opinion, I really like when an episode gives you so much different things to talk about, both in terms of bad execution and good execution, and other cool things. Also, next week is going to be My Villain Academia, and I'm sure that's going to be lovely. We're finally there. Anyway, let's begin. We're going to go in with the very quick recap. So, the episode started with us returning to UA, and the kids saying that, hey, we're going to show you what we've learned recently. They're going to be showing off all their cool little new abilities, and unfortunately, we are following from chapter 253, and I believe we go all the way to chapter 255 in this one. So, we 253, 254, 255, that's about 3 chapters, unless there's some kind of weird overlap there. Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. Right now, the anime did follow the timeline correctly. We then go into the Ochako scene with the Christmas gift. I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorite scenes in Hero Academia. I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed seeing it here. That said, when I saw Ochako's face, this one right here, I don't know, man. I really like the manga's version of it. Something about the anime's version just kind of throws me off. And here's the manga's version to compare. I think it's the line work in the manga's version that I enjoy more. Like, you know where she has her little blush things on her face? In the manga, they're drawn a little bit differently. I think that adds a little something else to the drawing. I don't know. I looked at it. I just felt disappointed with the anime's rendition of that final shot, because Ochako does sometimes get really pretty shots, and that's one of my favorite ones from the manga. So I just felt like the anime just kind of let me down on that one, but I think I might also be biased. It might also be an issue of proportions. I'm not sure. But what do you guys think? For those that know the manga's version and the anime version, are you able to spot a difference? Is there anything that makes you think like, oh yeah, it's not really there for you? Let me know down below. But I think that might just be like a personal bias type thing. Anyway, we move on into the Izuku gets attacked by Bakugo scene, which was just pretty funny, and the thing about brain matter oozing out, it's a funny joke. We move into the All Might Terrible joke scene, and he lets us know that Aizawa has been called away, and that segues us into the meat of the episode. Now, speaking of just writing stuff, this is a really interesting episode in the fact that it was adapted from a really interesting period in the My Hero Academia manga. The story of Aizawa and President Mike and their buddy Shirakumo, that story is primarily told in My Hero Academia Vigilantes. And that is a very unique thing to get in a manga. And then My Hero Academia, the manga proper, they just kind of summarized it. You don't very often get a critical bit of story information occurring in the spin-off manga during a very special flashback arc. You don't usually have that occur like that and then just come back into the anime and not show the extra material from the spin-off manga. It's a really unique experience, and it's interesting to see how they opted to go at it here. Like, they added a few more shots that reference the stuff that happened in Vigilantes, so that is appreciated, like the at least the visuals. But just such an interesting thing to watch. Like, for their strategy here, they more or less kept the flow from the original manga, but I think they supplemented a little bit with Vigilantes, which very worthwhile. Anyway, continuing with the recap. After we had the All Might giving us a segue, we had the President Mike and Aizawa in the car scene, and this was just really good because it showed the anxiety, and I think they alluded to what they were going to be doing very quickly. Let me see if I have any more notes here. They built things up really nicely, and we saw that we were going into Tartarus, and then we have the build up on just Nomu in general. After that, we go into the scene proper where these guys are talking between each other. We have Gran Torino there, and we have Gran Torino positing that Nomu have some degree of will, some degree of autonomy, and we do kind of see that displayed later with Kurogiri. Like, it's free will within the constraints of a cage. Imagine you're standing, like, quite literally in a cage, and the cage has like toys you can play with. It has some water, has some food. You know, you have the choice to go eat some food, but at the end of the day, you're still in the cage, right? It's that kind of free will. Anyway, after that, we have the information that Kurogiri's new quirk was born from multiple quirks, and that was why they didn't notice it sooner. And that's where we see one of the first tricks that the episode employs, specifically justifying why no one noticed this was Shirakumo. Now, this I think is a good trick, because we already know that quirks, when they come together, they can change. I mean, One for All is based on that premise. So what the author did here was that he used a trick that we knew in the past, and he was like, oh yeah, this is how we ended up in this situation. If you notice what the author is doing here, he's aware of a lot of the questions that someone's going to ask. And that's, if you look at the dialogue, he was very careful with writing in little bits to address the common questions that readers could have, so that he could take power away from the readers when it came to having the readers criticize any part of this. Mind you, I can still criticize a few parts of this, but it's not because of the author, it's because the animes might be a little bit terrible. That said, the justification of the multiple quirks, I think, was a good trick. We then go into the Shirakumo reveal properly, and here I need to talk about the anime botching. In the manga, there is something a lot more beautiful, because the manga, right after joint training was done, they had a flashback image of Shirakumo, President Mike, and I don't think Aizawa was in that one, but they had the flashback image. When I saw this, and I think I pointed this out in the anime episode review video for that particular episode, but when they had this in the manga, it was really cool, because I saw it, and in the video for that chapter, I said, oh, this is telling us there's going to be an Aizawa arc, because he got a random flashback. The anime completely just nixes that image, so they ruin the setup of what was coming. And, you know, as an anime fan, you might not really care, but it's the little things. The little things are really what elevate the experience of Hero Academia. When you see that the author has a plan like 3 months in advance, it makes you feel, yeah, this is really cool. It rewards people who are paying attention. It rewards that reader experience. But you know what? The anime is not about that. No, they don't do that. Like, when you look at it, the anime is not about little flourishes. They're not about little things. They're the kind of people that when the going gets tough, they might just flat out copy panels just frame by frame and put them into the anime. Or even worse off, they might take away detail from the actual source material. The anime is not very good in this regard. And unfortunately, when it comes to Aizawa gets hit by a lot of the removal process. Like, Shinzo himself and Aizawa got hit hard as we were leading up to Shinzo having a role in the anime. It's unfortunate, and again here I have to point it out just because the anime just botches a lot of things. Another time that they botched things also was when they were showing the montage of the kids in their work studies. There were other images that were placed into that montage that the anime just completely nixed, which again, unfortunate, because the author shows us that he has plans, but the anime isn't willing to match him. And it's unfortunate too, because all they have to do is draw a scene. It's not like they're animating it, it's just a very quick still. But what can you really do? Personally, I think instead of just showing us so many flashbacks, you could just add in 3 extra still shots, but whatever. We move on to the information that Kurogiri is in fact a Nomu. Back in the day when this was revealed in the manga, it was like, huh, yeah, you know what? He does have the eyes of a Nomu. Wow, some of us really did not notice that. So that might be a surprise depending on how open your mind was. We move in then to, I think, the first instance of actually, what is this dialogue? And so what I'm referring to is specifically when someone has a flashback to All for One. Let me get the image here for you guys. The reason we often attack UA, I don't know if this is what the anime itself said or if this is a bad translation. Let's just assume it's a bad translation. Just to make sure, I also went and I checked chapter 253. I was actually checking the manga as I was watching the episode because there were just so many instances where things were nonsensical. And this dialogue doesn't occur in chapter 253, which is good because if it did, I'd call chapter 253 out for being stupid as well. Oh, my apologies, not 253, 254. But in the anime, at least according to this translation, All for One goes into this and he premises the scene with the reason we often attack UA. That premising doesn't happen in the manga. In the manga, it just goes from President Mike saying that he doesn't get it why Shirakumo's corpse is at the core of Kurogiri. It goes to All for One saying superior quirks tend to end up clustered at UA, so it's perfectly rational. Yes, in the anime with potentially the botched translation, it's like, guy, you've only attacked UA twice, and both times you've been going after Class 1A. And I'm saying you, but it's really Shigaraki, and Shigaraki has a vendetta. Right? It doesn't make sense. You haven't attacked UA enough to even say often. It's been USJ and the summer camp. That's it. This is just targeted harassment. So I don't know what's going on there. It's a nonsensical line in the anime. It doesn't make any sense. The manga's version makes more sense, especially when right after you have Gran Torino calling it dumpster diving outside of a 3-star restaurant. That's maintained in both the anime and in the manga. The context just doesn't make sense. So very confused with that portion right there. Like, part of me really wants to rag on the anime and say it's the anime's fault, but again, translations might be kind of off. After that, we go into Gran Torino's theory on how they got Shirakumo. That being specifically, they probably swapped it out before the body got cremated. And this leads me into probably now, we're getting into the author's bad tricks here. So in the episode, he wants to make a point about this clue that they got at the end, the hospital being a critical clue. Like, heck, you have Hawks hearing about, oh, Shigaraki's at a hospital? Nice. The pieces are in place. And it's like, it's all about the way he positions this. But thinking about it, again, the episode wants to frame it as if the hospital clue is a critical clue with the way the characters react to it. But logically, if you have a situation where someone's body got swapped out before it got cremated, don't you have actually a pretty good paper trail? The moment that dead bodies being swapped out is coming into factor, then you can easily go look at the records and you can trace back every single spot that body was at. It would have been at a hospital for an autopsy, maybe got moved to a funeral home. I don't know how they do it in Japan. Point is, knowing that a body got swapped out actually does give you a very good starting location. If you're going to call the random hospital being said if you're going to call that a good starting point, 100% knowing that the body, or having a strong hypothesis that the body got swapped out before cremation, is equally as valid a starting point. But this is a thing that the author most likely did because he wanted to make Aizawa worthwhile. If you look at the episode, there's something you can do sometimes when you're writing a story, specifically when you're slotting things in. There are some times that you can notice that you could remove a scene from happening, and the start points and end points of that scene, they flow really well together. One place that you'll see that technique a lot is filler episodes, because filler or filler scenes are made to not change anything, because the manga's continuity requires that nothing be changed, so it's really self-contained. And so the flow points, and so the flow of the start and the end of the filler are not that jarring if you're looking at really good filler anyway. That's kind of what you have here. At the end of the day here, if the author wanted to, he 100% could have removed Aizawa's moment here and just said, yeah, actually, knowing that this guy had his body swapped out, that tells us, well, All For One has the ability to pluck a body out of either a hospital or a funeral home. That does give us a lot of spots to start with, because at the end of the day, one thing you have to keep in mind here too, with the hospital keyword, that keyword still requires a lot of work to be applied to actually find out which hospital out of hundreds in Japan is the hospital that Shigaraki is in. Because there is still that requirement of hard work to narrow down the hospital, that itself is what makes other keywords equally as valuable as the hospital keyword, especially again when you have a situation where you can most likely narrow down where exactly this guy's body got pilfered. So for this one, I feel like I understand what the author was trying to do, and I appreciate the technique going in there, but I do think that was propaganda. I think the author was trying to make Aizawa look good, or give Aizawa a scene. Mind you, I think it's pretty cool. I love that Aizawa got a scene. But when you couple that with other things in the episode, this was 100% the Aizawa is a great guy tour that he was doing. And we'll talk about those other things that happen in the episode as we get there. Moving on, Aizawa called out that miracles don't come easy. So this is another one of those, the author was being very self-aware. Because Gran Torino being like, yo, you guys are friends with Kurogiri's original person. Maybe you can rustle something up. It's like, yeah, that is very fairy tale-ish. I'm glad that Aizawa called it out, but at the same time, it's what happened. So, really smart on the author for acknowledging it. We then get Hood's reveal that the original body was that of a hoodlum, and it seems like the personality kind of carried through. So that was a really neat little detail. We move into Aizawa pointing out that Kurogiri was different in USJ, and this is again another writing trick, because the first thing people would ask if he did not put that writing trick in there was, hey, why was Kurogiri different in USJ? So again, on the author, applause. Really good, really smart. That was what I was wondering as well. And so I like that he acknowledges it. One thing you have to appreciate is that when an author acknowledges a potential weakness in their story, it tells the reader that the fact that he acknowledges it is the thing that gives you a small idea of a promise that he's going to talk about it later, right? And again, when you have an author who's self-aware of his weaknesses, it's good because it shows that he might be able to do something about those weaknesses. And as a reader, you can kind of put some faith into him. Now, after that, there is a sequence in the anime from the translations that I have that is nonsensical. And it's specifically in the anime episode that I have, Tsukachi says that Kurogiri at USJ, him being there itself was an experiment. So let me draw that image up for you here so you can see which one I'm talking about. So, as he says in the sub files I have, they could have been performing an experiment to see how his altered or perhaps erased memories would impact how he carries out orders. When I saw that, I thought, that's stupid. Like, really? Because Kurogiri's been active for years. It'd be kind of stupid to do the experiment now. Just it doesn't make logical sense. So when I went and I looked at the manga, color me surprised. The translation for the manga was different. Aizawa went in saying, I fought this guy at UA. He spoke completely different and he didn't react to me in any notable way. Tsukachi then said, it could be a side effect of the experiments. The programming could delete memories or create fake ones. So that's really different from what the anime's translation was saying. Because the anime's translation is saying a completely different concept than the concept that the manga was talking about. Anyway, again, this is just another one of the scenes which was just an ordeal to see in the anime. But don't worry, there's another one that's just really insane. After that, we have another really self-aware line, that being specifically when they're talking about Shirakumo's family and why they haven't been told about this. And Aizawa ultimately saying like, yeah, no, I'd rather his parents never see Shirakumo like this. So that was just really neat. That was just a way of keeping it within the family, so to say, or keep it within the profession. Because again, this is one of those things where people would ask, like, what do you want the parents to know? But again, remember, in Hero Academia, parents don't really matter. It's mostly all about the heroes. We then have the portion where Aizawa is using his eyes on Kurogiri, and I think this one is again another self-aware line, because the author has to kind of acknowledge that Aizawa isn't able to get rid of the mist around Kurogiri. And here we find out in the way that the anime says that his body is exactly what it appears to be. So just pretty much saying that his body is mist. And ultimately, that's just a way of saying the body is ultimately a mutant shape. Now, I gotta tell you, back when the manga came out with this information, that line, or the manga's version of that line, did cause quite a little bit of stir. It's just because it was so hard to interpret. What exactly were you trying to say with Kurogiri there? It's because Kurogiri himself is so strange in that he doesn't really have a solid body. Like, we know all about the weird tricks that happened back in USJ to explain this person's body, and how, you know, Bakugo was able to grab it or something like that. Anyway, Kurogiri is concerned about Shigaraki, which turns out to be a clue. Like, Aizawa is able to see, like, oh wait, you care about someone like Shigaraki? Oh, my friend also cared. Mind you, I do think looking at kindness as the connecting factor might be a little bit too generic, but ultimately, I do love the idea that Shigaraki is comparable to a stray cat that no one wanted and had to be taken in. I find that hilarious, and I like that interpretation. Anyway, after that, we have more Shirakumo flashbacks, where we see that Lunch Rush did in fact work at UA for a very long time. After that, we go into another thing with the author that I think is a bad writing trick. The expulsion thing. This is 100% retconning Aizawa's thing, because you have President Mike going into it and saying, oh yeah, no, he only expelled people on paper. And then you have the reveal of Class 2A, and them revealing that they in fact were not expelled. And it's like, yes, we finally get to see Class 2A, 254 chapters into the manga, and they are being brought up to justify that Aizawa is actually a reasonable person. Look, man, there's a lot of things going into this, because on one level you can say, oh, this is pretty consistent with Aizawa being a liar, because Aizawa 100% is a liar when it comes down to it. But there's a lot of problems that occur, and even in the anime you can kind of see it here. Like, the problem in the next shot, Aizawa asks, and he establishes that he has both the authority to expel and re-enroll people. And what this causes is, you have to look back at All Might, and then you have to look back at one scene with Miss Joke. With All Might freaks out because he sees that Aizawa expels people. But here's the thing, it's all on paper. So, if you see that Aizawa can expel people, the first thing you have to ask with All Might is just, if you could see the expulsions, why could you not see that Aizawa re-enrolled people? Why did you freak out? Now, mind you, when you look at the All Might situation back at the beginning of Hero Academia, All Might freaks out about the expulsion because, from the narrative perspective, the author wanted to drum up the tension with Aizawa. He wanted to make the readers themselves think like, oh yo, Izuku might get expelled if he sucks. Now mind you, if you go back to that first section, Izuku is somehow weaker than Hagakure. So let me just make sure I dial this back, because we have to understand here, what we are now addressing is probably one of the weakest parts in Hero Academia, that being the beginning, right? We are now talking about the shenanigans that occurred back in like chapter 5. First thing I will point out, just look at this shot in the manga. Look at how this was framed, right? Has expelled 154 students. Imagine being okay putting that little bit of trivia into your guidebook, right? And not putting in the fact has re-enrolled or has enrolled 154 students, right? That's stupid. And this is ultimately what tells you, okay, that was just there for dramatic tension, right? That's why that happens. Now, mind you, it also brings up more questions about All Might being All Might. You were coming into the hero course. Why did you not look into all the other classes? I mean, sure, I know you have emphasis on Izuku, but logically, you would be oriented on the current people, or you would be oriented on the current classes that UA has. Especially if you have a prophilic expeller like Aizawa, because Aizawa is probably going to ruin the flow of the classes. So, you know, it brings up those questions. And again, acknowledge that that portion of Hero Academia is just a giant tension trap, because when you think about it logically, there's no way that Izuku is going to be worse than Hagakure. Especially not when Izuku has a better body build than Hagakure, right? We then move into another section of Hero Academia, which again just makes this entire thing weird. It's specifically in chapter 103, and again, I'll show it to you right here, where Miss Joke says, "It's a rare year when you don't fail anyone. I guess you must be fond of this class." And right before that, she said, "Anyway, you still got all 20, huh?" Isn't that kind of weird? Isn't that kind of weird that a guy that only expels people on paper and can re-enroll them and wants to teach them lessons and really nurture them, isn't it kind of weird that someone who knows him so well is able to make the comment, "You still have all 20. And she points out that he hasn't failed anyone, and it's a rare year. Isn't this kind of weird context? Because what Miss Joke implies is that, no, Aizawa actually has gotten rid of numbers in his class. And again, Miss Joke knows this is the first year class. So the entire situation with this shenanigan of Aizawa having been this great guy that had powers to expel and re-enroll, it just reveals how compromising Hero Academia is when it comes to trying to draw attention. And also with the Miss Joke thing, it also shows that when it comes to authors, they are more likely to make mistakes on the little details. Although, in Horikoshi's case, he makes mistakes on both the small details and the giant details, as we have found out in recent era of Hero Academia. So really, maybe, when we're looking at this whole situation, this is just indicative of the fact that actually Horikoshi just makes a lot of mistakes in general, or Horikoshi is a little bit careless when it comes to. Actually, I don't want to say anything negative about the guy. He's probably so overworked. Like, point is, just keep in mind, this is definitely one of the shakiest parts of Hero Academia. And what you're looking at here, when you put everything together, this is 100% an Aizawa redemption tour that is here to just show that Aizawa is better than he initially seemed. Anyway, moving on, Aizawa makes a really interesting point about heroes who devalue their own life for the sake of justice, but the anime and the translation of the anime again make this so hard to understand. So this stuff occurs after the whole thing about Aizawa wanting the power to re-enroll and expel students. In the manga, after the line that Nedzu says, "The freedom is emblematic of UA's school spirit," Aizawa just says, "Because I want guys like you. I want heroes who can pull others along to live good, long lives." Right? That's what he says. In the anime, after Nedzu makes the comment about the freedom of UA, the first thing Aizawa said on the audio file that I have is, "I didn't want the students to turn out like you. Not a hero who devalues his own life for the sake of justice." So already there's an addition that's occurring there. And then in the anime, he goes in and says, "I wanted them to turn out like you." And that's where I'm just thinking, like, are we doing some kind of weird wordplay here? And then he continues into the line that the anime has, "A hero who can motivate because I want the greatest heroes to live good long lives." So the anime added 2 extra lines there that just ultimately confused me, and it was just like, what are you trying to say? Mind you, if I open my mind, I can try and figure it out, but good God, man. Also, just wanted to point out, it was really funny when, Gran Torino's listening there, and he points out that, "Oh yeah, I heard you expel people a lot." Like, it's just funny, that was his one contribution when you're having a really tense scene there. But that's another moment that just tells you, oh, the author was really trying to force this particular narrative to come out. Again, this was a series of chapters that was just rife with writing techniques. Anyway, we move on into Kurogiri responding to the questions after a small fake out, and we finally see Shirakumo's face. And again, this is a shot. I don't think the anime did this justice, but the anime wasn't doing anything justice here. Alright, man, look, look at this guy's face here, and I'll show you an image from the manga. Can you see a kind of difference? I tried to find the clearest shot I could, and it's just not clear enough. In the manga, it's a little bit scarier because you can see that there's like the suture wound, or like you can see some kind of wound on his face. It's hard to tell if it's the same kind of thing when you're looking at the anime. Also, the anime pointed out that Shirakumo died, being buried by rubble. I do believe in Vigilantes, he got hit by the rubble because he was protecting kids. So, a little bit more tragic of a story, but don't quote me on that one. I don't remember Vigilante's version of events. Anyway, moving on, I also think it's funny that this guy's self-image is so locked to that little thing he has across his nose. I mean, I really hope that when I pass away, if I ever do, I really hope that I don't have a random band-aid that I once applied to my cheek be such a big statement about who I am that it shows up on my ghost. You know? Really hope that doesn't occur. I found that one funny. Not gonna make fun of the author for that one. Anyway, I don't think the anime did this justice, and then we get the wonderful hospital line. I already talked about that. We also have Kurogiri shorted out after all that, and that might be important for the future, the fact that Kurogiri shorted out. And then we get the note on the Nomu, Aizawa just questioning what the Nomu are, and we have a wonderful all-for-one line of him comparing quirks to wine, pretty much. We then go into Tsukashi's line about the hospital being a place to start, and we go through that whole sequence of events where Hawks is able to get that little code word. Again, this is the author trying to make that hospital line, the hospital keyword, seem like a big deal, but again, logically, it's not that big of a deal. You could have reoriented this in any other angle to make any other thing here worthwhile. So, you know, writing techniques. Look, at the end of the day, a writer, when they need to push the narrative in a particular direction, they have to use all the tricks they have at their disposal. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes some tricks are more transparent than others. And then finally we end off on the Shigaraki scene, and this is unfortunately another shot where the anime's censoring just it doesn't leave as big of an impression as it could have, and that's really unfortunate. So for this one, again, I will show you the image in the manga so you can see for yourself. Check this insanity out, right? And then you compare it to the anime, and it's like, what is this weak sauce that the anime is giving us, man? It's nothing. That's nothing compared to what you got in the manga. The manga, you look at that picture and you're like, yo, I'm pretty sure he has that one pipe in his stomach to make sure he doesn't poop his pants, man. Right? There's just so many things going on there. It really fills it up. But yeah, this was just another moment where the anime lets down the whole production, but what can you really do? I think it's for kids, so it's just unfortunate. Makes you sad. Anyway, you know, at the end of the day, the anime has to. I'm pretty sure this is because of broadcast standards or something like that. Anyway, at the end of the day, this episode of Hero Academia, you know what? I talked so much, but I love it. I really love it. I love when episodes, I think, have both interesting techniques and terrible techniques, and also I love it when I can make fun of an adaptation. This just makes watching anime and talking about anime so much more fun, because for me, I don't really like it when an anime is perfect, because there's only so many different ways to say something's good, but there's a lot of different ways to describe how bad something could be or how questionable something could be. And I definitely like it when we have more kind of gray areas to talk about, because at that point you can really talk about an author's particular style or an anime's adaptation's particular style. But yeah, overall, episode 19 of Hero Academia, the episode is stacked. It comes in with so many different things to look at, so many different angles, so many different techniques, so many different things the author is trying to do to not only make things make sense in the context, not only try to make a terrible beginning make more sense, but also try to repair a character who turned out to be really popular. It's ultimately a really fun time. It's cool to see the author's strategies going into play here. It's cool to finally see Class 2A again. And this is a bigger point. Keep in mind, the author's not very good at managing a lot of characters. We know this to be the case. We just got out of joint training, and joint training itself is the product of the author trying to repair his initial mishandling of characters. You see that with Class 1B. Class 2A showing up the way they did was just, again, another gentle nudge toward the fact that, yeah, this guy is not the best at planning out character reveals when it comes to people that aren't important. And we also know that he just there's a lot of issues with balancing screen time in Hero Academia. This episode for me, and even looking back at it now, really stands to me. Again, another episode of just showing both the strengths in Hero Academia and the weaknesses. One thing I will say as well that's apparent, especially with this episode, is that the author is really self-aware. As you go into the manga, you see it more and more when he's doing really questionable things, or when he has to deal with really questionable plot elements. He will definitely turn up the self-awareness. But to have such a concentration of moment after moment of self-awareness about the questions being asked was a real treat for the episode. Guys, let me know what you thought down below. My throat is killing me. You can't tell, but my room is extremely smoky because of the wildfires. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. I hope that I made this fun for you, because it was definitely fun for me.